الحمد لله الحمد لوليه والصلاة والسلام على نبيه محمد وآله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى جل جلاله في القرآن المجيد والفرقان الحميد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وذكرهم بأيام الله وقال بعد واذكروا آلاء الله لعلكم تفلحون صدق الله مولانا العظيم وبلغنا رسوله النبي الكريم ونحن على ذلك من الشاهدين والشاكرين والحمد لله رب العالمين إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله وعلى آلك وأصحابك يا حبيب الله. My respectable Muslim brothers, today the function of Giyarwee Shareef is being celebrated, and the meeting was held by the Muslim brothers of Bedford under the kind control of Sayyid Anwar Shah Kazmi, may he live long. And I recited two passages of the Holy Quran. One is وَذَكِّرْهُمْ بِأَيَّامِ اللَّهِ. O my holy Prophet, please make them remember the days of Allah. And the other verse says وَاذْكُرُوا آلَاءَ اللَّهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ. And remember the bounties of Allah so that you may be blessed, so that you may you may succeed. This is the verbal translation of the passage I recited before you. And according to the title of the meeting, I liked to launch the subject concerning with the title of the meeting. Here, the day of Giyarwee Shareef is being celebrated. This is mostly objected by the misled Muslims. They say that it is innovation. But my Muslim brothers, it is your duty to check everything in the light of Holy Quran and the prophetic traditions and the consensus of competent Muslim scholars of every age, and in the light of Islamic analogy. These are four sources of law which are necessary to be observed at the time of making any speech at any topic. This topic is being discussed with the title of Giyarwee Shareef. Since the word of Giyarwee Shareef is not mentioned in the Holy Quran and the prophetic traditions, therefore misled Muslims mostly blame it to be an innovation. But being Muslim, it is our duty to check the legitimacy and legality of everything in the light of four sources of Islamic law aforesaid. Here I recited first of all the verse وَذَكِّرْهُمْ بِأَيَّامِ اللَّهِ. Directly it was asked from Moses, may grace and peace of Allah be upon him, to make the community remember the days of Allah. So the commentatorial jurisprudence says that, means usul tafsir says that the sciences discussed in the words in the text of the Holy Quran are 5. They are called ulum khamsa, means the 5 sciences stated and related in the text of the Holy Quran. And 2 sciences are specially mentioned under the title of these 2 verses of the Holy Quran. One of them is the bounties of Allah, the other is the days of Allah. The first science of the Holy Quran is Ilmul Ahkam, means the science concerning with action and omission, means what is to be done and what is to be omitted and what is to be neglected and what is to be avoided. And the other one is Ilmul Mukhasamati Warrad, means the controversies concerning with the Jews and Christians and hypocrites and infidels. These 5 communities are mostly contradicted by the Holy Quran. First of all, the Jews, because they were previous to every religious community according to the Quranic record. They were also criticized by the Holy Quran. And the second was Christianity. Christianity was also criticized and condemned by the Holy Quran because it was against the instructions of the Prophet. The fundamental, the basic principle of Christianity is Trinity, and Trinity was completely prohibited by Jesus, may grace and peace of Allah be upon him, because the oneness of Allah, the individuality of God, the monotheism is a main subject of the total prophets to be discussed in their meetings, in their books, in their Sharia. And the third community, the hypocrites, because the first community to be encountered in Medina Tayyibah was hypocrites. The hypocrisy was the first community to oppose Islam with the title of Islam. And the fourth one, idolatry, the paganism. The paganism was the first community to oppose the Islamic ideology because they were resident of Mecca when Nabi Kareem ﷺ proclaimed to be a prophet. The first opposition attempted by the community was paganism. So these 4 communities were discussed in the controversies of the Holy Quran, and this science was named as Ilmul Mukhasimati Warrad. And the third science stated and related in the text of the Holy Quran is Ilmut Tazkir bi ala illah, means to make the society memorize the bounties of Allah Jalla Jalaluhu, Almighty Allah. And the fourth science is ilmu tazkir bi ala illah, means to make the society remembers the bounties, the days of Allah. The days of Allah can be defined as the days in which the bounties of Allah were granted on the pious people, and the infidels, the pagans, the mutineer of the prophets were condemned, were penalized, and were chastised by Allah, Almighty Allah. So those days are called the days of Allah. The fifth science is ilmu tazkir bil maut wa ma ba'dahu min al hashr wal nashr wal mizan wa ghayr zalik, means to make the society remember the death, the total eschatology, the life in the curtain, means the life in the part between the world and the judgment day, and about the accountability which is going to be held in grave, and the punishment which is going to be imposed on the judgment day, and the other procedures which are going to be conducted, to be managed on the judgment day, and the procedure which is going to be adopted in the granting of paradise and in the conviction for the hell. So these four sciences were expressly discussed in the Holy Quran with the explicit way. So the topic of Giyarwee means the 11th date of a month for the celebration of the attributes, the qualities, the miracles, the kiramat, the other qualities of Sayyidina Abdul Qadir Jilani, and to discuss the other current and contemporary problems of the Muslims, and to sort out the proper solution of the problems of the Muslims. The topic of Giyarwee Shareef is not only the dignity and attributes and qualities and superhumanities or supernaturals of Sayyidina Abdul Qadir Jilani, but all of the Muslims' problems are discussed and their solutions are sorted out, and all of the Muslim difficulties are tried to be removed from the way of the Muslims. So this is the main purpose of Giyarwee Shareef. Now we are duty bound to check the legality and legitimacy of Giyarwee Shareef in the light of Quran and prophetic traditions and the consensus of the Muslim competent scholar of the age and the Islamic analogy. First of all, we shall check it in the light of the Holy Quran. Quran says, فَذَكِّرْهُمْ بِأَيَّامِ اللَّهِ. O my Holy Prophet, or O Moses, may grace and peace of Allah be upon him. Directly this address was made to Moses, may grace and peace of Allah be upon him, about the Israelites. Means the Israelites should memorize the bounties of Allah. Means how they were emancipated from the slavery of Pharaoh, and how they got the power under the supervision of Moses, may grace and peace of Allah be upon him. And how Almighty Allah bestowed the bounties on them, because they were slaves of Pharaoh, and they lived more than centuries under the slavery of Pharaoh, and it was a very complicated question for the Israelites to emancipate themselves from the slavery of Pharaoh. And Moses, may grace and peace of Allah be upon him, was foretold that he was going to be born to the community which was slave in those days under the prevailing law of the country. And accordingly, Moses, may grace and peace of Allah be upon him, was born by the special omnipotence of Almighty Allah to Israelites, and he was brought up by Pharaoh in his palace, and when he attained the age of majority and age of puberty, he launched a war against Pharaoh and his community, and ultimately he had to emancipate his community from his slavery by migrating from that country. Since it was 10th of Muharram Sharif when they migrated from Egypt for Palestine, and they were going to be prevented by the intervention of Red Sea, and they were chased up by Pharaoh's army, and the other army was sitting on the other side of the Red Sea, and there was no way open for them to pass through towards Palestine. Therefore, they had to cross the Red Sea, and there was no boats, there were no any means to cross the Red Sea. Therefore, they had to split the Red Sea, and according to the instructions of Allah, Moses, may grace and peace of Allah be upon him, used his staff to split the ocean. So sea was split into two pieces by one hit of staff by Moses, may grace and peace of Allah be upon him. So the day was announced as Day of Allah, because it was a day for the bounties of Allah to be granted to Moses, may grace and peace of Allah be upon him, and Pharaoh and his community was penalized. So these two types of bounties were granted to Moses, may grace and peace of Allah be upon him, along with his community, Israelites. So when Nabi Kareem ﷺ migrated from Medina Tayyibah, from Mecca to Medina Tayyibah, he found the people observing the fast of 10th of Muharram Sharif. He investigated about the reality of that fast. The Jews of Medina Tayyibah told him that the 10th of Muharram was solemnized as a sacred day, as the day of Allah Rabbul Izzat, because they were emancipated and their enemy was dishonored and humiliated. So just to show the gratitude, just to show the thank towards Allah, they observed the fast. Nabi Kareem ﷺ told them that he himself was nearer to Moses, may grace and peace of Allah be upon him, than them, Jews. Therefore he observed the fast of 10th of Muharram. So here it was established that anywhere when the bounties of Allah can be proved to be granted to the pious people, that day can be announced as a day of Allah, and that day can be observed and solemnized and celebrated. With the same way, Quran says, ربنا أنزل علينا مائدة من السماء تكون لنا عيدا لأولنا وآخرنا وآية منك وارزقنا وأنت خير الرازقين. Means the Israelites requested, Jesus, may grace and peace of Allah be upon him, was requested by Israelites to ask Allah, Almighty Allah, to grant a prepared food, a cooked food, a prepared food for the service of those people. So accordingly, he asked the favor of Allah Jalla Jalaluhu, and a complete tablecloth with the proper food was sent down by Almighty Allah just to fulfill their requirements. And that day was announced as Eid. Eid means repetitively coming, means twice, thrice, forever. Means the day which was utilized for the sending down the bounties of Allah was declared to be day of Allah, and the day was repeated for the celebration and showing the pleasure and paying the thanks and gratitude towards Allah. But those people are mostly seen on that very occasion that they go to the pubs, clubs, and the places of luxuries and the places of commission of sins. But on the contrary, Muslims are accustomed to worship Allah Jalla Jalaluhu, to solemnize and celebrate Eid. But at least the being Eid of that day was proved by the Holy Quran, and it was not condemned or criticized by the Quranic text, and it was proved that that day was declared to be Eid when a day which was utilized for the sending down of the bounties of Allah was declared to be Eid of a community. So why the Muslims should not celebrate the day of birth of Muhammad Mustafa alayhi salatu wasalam, when all of the bounties are inextricably woven together with the birthday of Muhammad Mustafa alayhi salatu wasalam, and the bounties, all of the bounties found in the world are by virtue of, through the birthday of Muhammad Mustafa alayhi salatu wasalam. The fundamental, the basic bounty of Allah is existence of entity of Muhammad Mustafa alayhi salatu wasalam, and all of the other bounties are parasitals. They are not independent. They are by virtue of Muhammad Mustafa alayhi salatu wasalam. When the other bounties which are by virtue can be declared to be an Eid, to be a day of Allah, so the day of Muhammad Mustafa alayhi salatu wasalam is worthier with the stronger reasons to be called a day of Eid or a day of celebration. So as the day of celebration of Muhammad Mustafa alayhi salatu wasalam is day of bounty of Allah, and that can be called a day of Allah, the day of death of Syed Abdul Qadir Jilani can also be called a day of Allah, because that day is believed to be the day of meeting of of Syed Abdul Qadir Jilani with Allah Jalla Jalaluhu. So the meeting of the also Sakalain with Allah Rabbul Izzat is an abnormal bounty of Allah. Therefore, that day should be celebrated as a day of Allah. وَذَكِّرْهُمْ بِأَيَّامِ اللَّهِ. This is fifth science of the Holy Quran, to celebrate the days of Allah. Just like day of Ibrahim, may grace and peace of Allah be upon him, is celebrated with the title of Eid al-Adha, because when Ibrahim was being tested by Allah, Almighty Allah, and it was a great ordeal, means his son was required to be slaughtered, to be slain by Ibrahim with his own hand. And it was a very difficult examination, difficult test. And Ibrahim ﷺ, the grace and peace of Allah be upon him, succeeded to qualify the examination set before him. So that day was really the day of bounty of Allah. And that day is being celebrated ever since up to now as a day of Allah. But what is the reason of this day to be named as Day of Allah? Because this day was of the bounty of Allah on Ibrahim, may grace and peace of Allah be upon him. So in the same way, the day of death of Sayyidina Ghaus al-Thaqalain radiyallahu ta'ala anhu is also a day of bounty of Allah, because when he met with Allah Rabbul Izzat, that was a day of great prayer. And at that time, many bounties of Allah are believed to be received by the humanity, because when two friends meet with each other at any time, the facilities are provided for the society. And Nabi Kareem ﷺ was also reported to have gone towards the shrine of martyrs of Uhud Sharif. There were 70 persons who were buried in the foot of hill of Uhud Sharif. And Nabi Kareem ﷺ was reported to have been going there annually, once in a year. The annual visiting of Muhammad Mustafa ﷺ was proved and substantiated with the authenticated and unchallengeable sources. It is found in the canonical books of the traditions that Nabi Kareem ﷺ used to go there to visit their shrine once a year, especially on the day on which they were martyred and they were buried, because that day was bounties of Allah. So when it was repeated in the whole life of Muhammad ﷺ, since Nabi Kareem ﷺ lived afterwards near about 8 years, so the visiting of Muhammad Mustafa ﷺ, the shrine of martyrs of Uhud Sharif, was repeated for 8 times. So this repetition of the visiting for 8 times is enough proof to substantiate that the day of death of pious people is a day of bounties of Allah. Therefore it can be it can be decided as a day of Allah. When it is proved to be day of Allah, it can be celebrated and solemnized. So under this principle, we are in the right to celebrate the day of Giyarwee Shareef. And since we assemble together in a sacred place just to propagate for Islam and to answer all of the new questions raised against Islam, so this type of purpose itself is an additional and an independent reason. So according to the principle established by the research, the day of death of pious people can be believed as a day of Allah, and every day of Allah can be celebrated and can be memorized, and it was ordered and obliged by Allah Rabbul Izzat to celebrate or to make society remember the day of Allah. وَذَكِّرْهُمْ بِأَيَّامِ اللَّهِ. So this type of action cannot be called an innovation, a bid'ah, because bid'ah is a thing which cannot be proved by the Holy Quran and the prophetic traditions. So whatever can be directly or indirectly, explicitly or implicitly proved by the Holy Quran and the prophetic traditions, that can be called commentary of the Holy Quran. Since it was implicitly proved, indirectly proved by the Holy Quran, therefore it is an ignorance to say it to be bid'ah. And in addition to that, bid'ah itself is of 5 kinds. First of all, bid'ah is farz or wajib, means first class obligatory or second class obligatory, means farz or wajib. Farz is called first class obligatory and second class obligatory means wajib. So what is the principle to call a bid'ah to be first class obligatory or second class obligatory? The principle is when a new thing is necessary to protect an obligatory, first class obligatory, the innovation is also first class obligatory. And when the innovation is used to protect the second class obligatory, the innovation is also second class obligatory. For instance, you can see that kullu fa'ilin marfu'un, kullu maf'ulin mansubun, kullu muzafun alehi majrurun. So this principle and this regulation was invented by Sayyidina Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and it was not mentioned in the Holy Quran and the prophetic traditions, and afterwards the same methodology was expanded and detailed, and it was improved, and it assumed the form of 2 big sciences, where one of them is called Occidences, the second is called syntactics, ilmus sarf and ilmun naw. And these types of books were codified by the following scholars. And the Arabicization of the Holy Quran, the diacritical signs of the Holy Quran were not imposed and not written in the time of Muhammad Mustafa, may grace and peace of Allah be upon him, neither in the age of the caliphates. And for the first time, under the governorship of Hajjaj bin Yusuf, the worst person in the Muslim history, the diacritical signs were imposed and written by Abul Aswad Doli. And Abul Aswad Doli was a pupil and student of Hazrat Sayyidina Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu. So according to the principle, the diacritical signs are bid'ah, Zamma, Kasra, Fatah. These type of signs are called diacritical signs. Diacritical signs are bid'ah, but they are used for the protection of the words of the Holy Quran, and the protection of the Holy Quran, the words of Holy Quran is necessary for the safety of the meaning. And since the safety of words along with the meaning of the Holy Quran are necessary according to the Islamic ideology, therefore this bid'ah is believed to be first class obligatory or the second class obligatory, because the imposition of the diacritical signs is used for the protection of the Holy Quran, the text of the Holy Quran and the prophetic traditions. Therefore the diacritical signs, Zamma, Kasra, Fatah, etc., etc., are also first class or second class obligatory. And sometimes the residential type of Islamic institutes, Islamic academic institutes are found here and there, which were not available or could not be provided with in the era of Nabi Kareem ﷺ and the Caliphate as well. And now the residential universities, along with the teachers, their salaries and their academic facilities are provided in every Muslim country, which are totally innovation. But since the education is facilitated by means of initiation of these type of universities, since the facilities for the education are second class obligatory for the propagation of Islamic literature, therefore these type of universities and the institutes are also second class obligatory. وَمَا عَلَيْنَا إِلَّا الْبَلَاغُ الْمُبِينُ.
Thank you very much, Pir Syed.
Sometimes the innovation, the bid'ah, is used to protect sunnah. Then that bid'ah is included in the category of sunnah. Just like Taraweeh is sunnah. But sometimes the companions of the Holy Prophet realized that the Taraweeh in the form of individual prayer would be wasted, would be neglected. Therefore they arranged for the congregational prayer of Taraweeh, and Farooq-e Azam radiyallahu anhu was reported in Bukhari Shareef, Ni'matul bid'atu hazihi. This bid'ah means the congregational prayer of Taraweeh is a good innovation. Since this innovation, this bid'ah was initiated and invented to protect Sunnah, therefore this innovation is believed to be Sunnah. Now, according to the Islamic ideology, the congregational prayer for Taraweeh is also Sunnah, when it is in fact innovation, as it was mentioned in Bukhari Shareef, referring to Farooq Azam radiyallahu ta'ala, Ni'matul bid'atu hazihi. So it was proved that when a bid'ah is used for the protection of Sunnah, that bid'ah would change its category and it would be changed into Sunnah, because it is used for the protection of Sunnah. And sometimes it is permissible Just like the delicious dishes are permissible, you can use all of the good and halal dishes for daily use, and it is not necessary for any delicious food to have been found in the era of Muhammad Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam or eaten by Muhammad Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam or by his companions. Just like new type of biryani and new type of rice and the ketchups which are mixed nowadays, they are believed to be lawful and permissible because it has got nothing to do with the devotion or with the worshipping, and there is no any type of sin or virtue. Therefore this type of food are believed to be permissible. Just like new type of clothes which were not prohibited by the Holy Quran and the prophetic traditions or by consensus of the Muslim scholars or Islamic analogy, they are bid'ah, but they are permissible. And sometimes bid'ah is totally void, invalid and illegitimate. Just like the people who are believing that no reward, no award can be communicated to the souls of dead bodies, no virtue can be made a gift. This bid'ah is haram. It was mentioned by Imam Mullah Ali Qari in his book Sharaf Fiqh Akbar, and reliable sources say that the belief of Mu'tazilite is also bid'ah. All of the misled sects and the sectarianism which is containing the unlawful ideology, they are also bid'ah, they are also innovation, but this type of innovation is totally unlawful. So we can say that the bid'ah of Giyarwee Shareef is of the type of second class or first class obligatory, because Giyarwee Shareef is used for the protection of Islam. Since the protection of Islam is obligatory, first class obligatory, therefore Giyarwee Shareef can be believed as first class obligatory because this is used and utilized for the protection of Islam. And if a new thing is invented in new countries, in new worlds to protect Islam, just like you can say that this computer is innovation, and if all of the other resources for the communication of Islamic message are closed and only the usage and utilization of computer is allowed, under such circumstances computerization would be first class obligatory, because there would be no source of communication of any Islamic message. And this innovation, this bid'ah, can be used for the execution of the duty of first class obligatory, therefore it would be included in the first class obligatory. So these 5 types of innovation is counted in Islamic studies. Innovation with the status of first class obligatory, innovation with the status of second class obligatory, and innovation with the status of sunnah, and innovation with the status of permissibility, and innovation with the status of prohibition. This type of bid'ah is totally prohibited by Islamic law, but Giyarwee Shareef cannot be categorized as a bid'ah of totally unlawful, because the celebration of Giyarwee Shareef is mostly and generally utilized for the communication of Islamic message.